There's still a lot of people who are a little bit hesitant on AI. There's a little bit of stigma around it. Throw that stigma out. The tools are out there, and the best of the best are using those tools.
Got questions, we bring the facts. From proven pros who walk the tracks. Business life, no smoke, just flames. Ask the experts, David Williams brings the game.
Boom. Welcome back, everybody. It is that time of the week again. It is June 19th, and it's Thursday, and it's 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're coming at you live in the Insurance Syndicate Group and all over Facebook. And we got a very, very special guest today on another episode of Ask the Experts. Today, our guest is Jay Floyd. He's a speaker. He's a leadership coach, a tech veteran turned author. His new book, Rare on Purpose. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. Jay's mission is simple. Help people own their uniqueness in God placed inside them of blending into a world chasing sameness. As a former MC who rose to engineering, leadership, and tech, Jay unites creativity, faith, and strategy to guide teams toward what he calls the Rare Stack Framework, a blueprint for turning hidden gifts into visible impact. He hosts the Uncut Gems podcast, and he equips leaders with tools like Free Strength Finder surveys and really helps them scale their organization. And he is a big proponent of AI, where the world is headed. And I'm incredibly excited to have Jay on the show today. Jay, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Dave. Appreciate it, Andy. Super excited to be here. I'm amped. And the music you had at the beginning, it's got me amped already. I'm ready to go.
All right, I love it. So let's start out where we like to start out. Tell us a little bit about maybe your American dream story. Where did it all begin? Where did you start? And how did it get you to where you are today?
Man, it's a great one. I would say long story short, but there's no way to make it short. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. Grew up probably about as destitute as you can get in my younger age. I grew up with a single mom, divorced mom, one brother who was older. We were complete opposites, right? My brother's like huge, out in the streets, popular. I'm like small, super shy, not confident, complete opposites. My brother ends up getting caught up in the streets. He was murdered, shot and killed when I was 16. He was 19. Really pushed me into a phase of trying to figure out what life was all about. Do I take the route he was taking, or do I stay on the route that I was on? It really was kind of an identity moment for me. I was on pace to, according to my high school counselors, they wanted me to go to Ivy League schools. At that point, I was completely traumatized, though, so I opted out. I just went to community college, right? I was like, I'll just stay home, stay near my mom, protect my mom, keep my mom safe, be a sort of a counselor for her, which is what I wanted to do. And interestingly enough, that journey took me into tech. I ended up going to DeVry Institute and then going to Bryant Stratton College and getting on the dean's list and finding my purpose and ending up working in corporate world in tech and working with a lot of people that went to those Ivy League schools anyway. And so, sometimes God has his hand on your life. He'll open those doors where you need to go.
100%.
Yeah. So that's really kind of it in a nutshell.
A mentor, tells me this all the time. There's good ideas, there's great ideas, and there's God ideas. And when you're in alignment with a God idea, which is in alignment with your assignment, then there's nothing that you can't accomplish.
Alignment with the assignment. I like that. My first my first coaching book was called The Driver's Seat. And it's all about having that courage to get out of the back seat of your life and get in that driver's seat and drive. God is the navigation system. He's going to map it out for us. But you got to get in that driver's seat. You gotta have the courage to drive. You got to get out of those seat belts that have you stuck in the back. And sometimes it's scary, but you have to, right? Once we get to adult life, that car is rolling and that road is real.
Absolutely. I love that.
Beautiful.
So maybe we could start out with, where did that bring you to today? Where do you find yourself spending most of your time today and making the biggest impact?
Yeah. So I found my calling in data, right? I got into tech and became a data warehouse engineer. I found that I just love answering big questions for companies in data, and that sparked my career. I ended up getting poached by a few folks and working for a few pretty large law firms. Most notably, I was at Jones Day for 7 years and really made a name for myself there. And something started to happen there that all of my coworkers started to come to me for their career advice to figure out what's going on with their alignment. And then my one-on-one meetings with my manager started turning into, hey, what do you think about what's going on with John? What do you think about what's going on with Sarah? And all of a sudden, I started to realize that I was actually being used as a coach in
Yep.
my job. So my manager,
Almost like a male Wendy Rhodes off of Billions.
exactly, exactly. And my leaders were figuring out this dude has something, right? And we're going to
Yep.
use it. But I hadn't figured it out, right? And so once I just woke up one day and,
I found that a lot of times other people will recognize our gifts sometimes before we do.
and that's the biggest thing that I like to do is I believe in two words, autonomy and agency. You
Yep.
got to have agency, right? A lot of times we go through life and we're just relying on serendipity. We're just hoping we get this job that we want, and we're hoping that when we get there, the manager is great at recognizing what we are best at and can help us develop in all those ways. But to be honest, a lot of managers are not great at that.
Nope.
You know, they're great at strategy or they're great at other things. They're not great at coaching and developing. So we're really leaving that to chance when we don't take it into our own hands. So I really try to coach people to figure it out because I know once I figured it out, I just woke up one day and God was like, you know what? You are a coach. You're a life coach. You're a career coach. You've always been a coach your whole life. I put this in you and I've led you through a journey in life that has developed some things in you, and you got to bring them forward. You got to be courageous enough to bring them forward. Don't rely on the paragraph that's in that job description because that's really what we do, right? We're like, usually we got imposter syndrome anyway, so we don't even think we're good enough for that job description, right? But it's like, I'm just going to hope that I can do that. But really, we're shaped different than that. We're not that paragraph. We got a unique shape. We've been through so much in life. And I found that when you lean into it, that's where the fulfillment is, right? David, I told you earlier about my brother being murdered. I never talked about that. I went 10, 15 years in my corporate life. People would say, hey, you got any siblings? Were you an only child? Yep, I was. I wouldn't talk about anything that I had been through because I was ashamed of it. For one, I'm one of the only Black people at these companies. I don't want to be the guy who's talking about his brother who got shot and killed. I don't want to be a stereotype. So I didn't bring it up. And I hid something that God had allowed me to go through to develop me. I was hiding it. And in turn, I was hiding a lot of the strength that God had gave me. So once I turned that around and started talking about it and becoming what God had shaped me through that, it unleashed me to be way more than a job description.
And what I heard there was interesting too, what God allowed me to go through. Because I think a lot of times what people do is like, hey, God, why are you doing this to me? Another setback in my life. Another setback in my life. What did I do to deserve this? And they go into a place of scarcity, right? The things that are happening to me become the very thing that define me. But I think it's when you have the shift to what you said, God allowed me to go through it. And it's not, hey, the things you're doing to me, but it's no, the things you're doing for me. And then you start asking why. Well, why is this happening for me, and how can this serve me? I also lost a brother at the age of 49 through drugs and addiction. And, I feel like, I went through that journey to maybe help other kids early on, and I belonged in a place of education. So we actually have in his name, for free every other night, we serve and we help kids and parents, and we teach them the fundamentals that they don't teach in school, but they should: leadership skills, philanthropy, how to have a heart for other people, emotional intelligence, helping kids discover their why and their passion. Because I believe, me and my brother both turned out very differently. We both had great parents. That was the commonality. But I think sometimes it takes more, it takes more than parents. They need that right influence, that mentor in their life to help them figure out, the roadmap and the compass and, what they're destined for in life. And now we do that for other kids in his name. My health challenges that we were talking about earlier in the call, I believe God put me through that, because if it wasn't through that, I probably wouldn't have just put the intentional discipline in my life to create a different life, to get on the other side of those challenges. And now I'll be best in a place where maybe I can recognize other people that aren't as resilient as me, that are going through some of those very same things, that now I have that roadmap and I have that compass on the way out of something that could typically break people. So I firmly believe God put me on this planet to pour into people, to build people, to serve people. And all the triumphs that I've walked through, the fires that I've walked through, just like you, those were all the lessons that we had to learn in order to be able to lead.
I love it. I love it. And that the whole idea of life is not happening to you, and to reframing that to a different perspective. One of the things that I did, that book that I wrote called The Driver's Seat, the original title of it was Life is Not Happening to You, It's Happening Through You. Right. And I shortened it because it was too long. But the one thing that occurred to me was life is choosing us. Right. Not everybody woke up this morning. Right. When we are no longer living, there's no difference between our bodies and the dirt. Right. So what's the only difference right now is there's a spark. There's something that's keeping our bodies regulated at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That is really hot when you think about it, right? If it was 98.6 outside, we would be talking about how hot it is. But our bodies are regulated at that. That is a miracle. Life is happening through us. That's a spark. And I felt like if it chose me again, I got to honor it. I got to honor everything that I've been through, everything that it allowed me to go through. You got to honor it. Right?
No, absolutely. And I know you coach and you work with a lot of, business owners, people in life. And, I feel like a lot of times so far, people are chasing some of the wrong things, right? Maybe it's they're in their business, they're in the right vehicle, but they're chasing the wrong things in their vehicle.
Mhm.
And then they try to scale that when they're focused on the wrong things. And I'm a big believer, if it's not working small, it won't work big. You can't pour gasoline on something that's broken, to get your house in order. You got to have that solid foundation. You got to have the right thing, and then you can start to build the skyscraper on top of it. So when you're working and coaching with other individuals, what are some of the commonalities that you find in those individuals? Why things are maybe not working in their business the way they want them, or the way they envision them in working?
I think the number one commonality is what I think the industry currently calls imposter syndrome, or whatever people want to call that. A lack of belief, right? You've hung your hat on a negative belief in yourself, and that's what leads people down this road of chasing the wrong destination, right? Like, I coach a lot of leaders, managers, tech leaders, and most of the time, whenever we start our first coaching call, I'm finding out, where is it you want to go, right? I look at being a coach is exactly like being a personal trainer. If somebody tells a personal trainer, I want to get six-pack abs, that trainer is going to let them know the exercises they need to do to get there, based on what they bring to the table, their genetics, their habits, etc. I'm doing the same thing. Where is it you want to go? And then I'm helping them reframe. Why are you seeking that promotion? Why are you seeking to go public? Why are you seeking this? What is it you're really looking for? So we can really get down to a first principles way of thinking. And then now let's build the exercises to get you that six-pack abs. Now that we know exactly the six-pack you're looking for, the real one that's underneath all those other layers, here's the exercises that I'm going to hold you accountable, and we're going to get it done. But honestly, I really go by strengths. I help everybody find their unique strengths. So the first thing that we start doing, the first exercises, we're going to go back to your life. We're going to go back to your story. I don't care if you're a CEO, if you're a CFO, if you're just a people manager, we're going back to your story. How did you get here is what I call it. right? The first couple of weeks is what brings you here? Because that's going to be where all of your strength lies.
No, absolutely. I love that. Now, I'm a firm believer everybody needs a new coach. Sometimes that next breakthrough, it's not about more books. It's not about more courses. It's not about hustling and grinding more, but it's maybe finding that right individual that's already been to the destination that you are, that can walk lockstep with you and, help you get to where you want to go. So how have you really found, people that have, never worked with a coach like yourself, all of a sudden you get to plug in? I would love to hear one of your biggest success stories of where somebody was at as an individual, or, where their business was at, and then how they started working with you and what it looked like to go from good to great.
I mean, it's pretty much the blueprint of what I do. I do a lot of freelance coaching as well, and companies call me when they have those, specifically in tech. There's a lot of cynicism when it comes to coaching. There's a lot of people who really don't believe in it, but they're trying to get to the next level. That's usually when I'm called, right? Because I'm going to give a message that's very relatable. As far as examples, and it's been so many. At least 75% of the people I coach, they start off by saying, "I don't know about this coaching thing, man."
Yep.
I'm glad I set this up because my company said this is a good idea. I'm open to whatever you got to say. And by the end of the call, I end every first call with, "Hey, you don't got to choose me. You could go choose another coach. But here's what I bring to the table. If you want to book me, here's my calendar link. Set up a bi-weekly and we're rocking and rolling." 9 times out of 10, we're rocking and rolling, right? Because what I bring to the table is I am not, a lot of times they just think that it's something that they see on TV. What I am is a reframer. I'm not here to say I know it all. I'm here to help you realize that you already know it all. You're just
Yep.
looking at it differently.
Sometimes it's just that reframe or that perspective shift where it's like,
Absolutely.
it could just be manipulating a couple different words in that self-talk that you're giving to yourself to, look at it from a different perspective, and that could change everything.
Because let's just be real, as humans, the number one, I read this somewhere, the number one human trait, the thing that's evolved the most in us, is the ability to rationalize our own behavior.
Yep.
That is our sharpest trait that distinguishes us from other animals. And as long as we're stuck there, I don't care how smart you are or how successful you've been, you can't get over that without somebody helping you reframe it.
No, absolutely. And I know you're a big data guy, and I'd be curious of, when you're working and you're coaching other businesses, organization, or in the, the current seat that you're in now, even with Zapier, how are you really leveraging the right data and KPIs, and then connecting that to, purpose to get a winning formula in terms of driving results that's going to push the needle on that, very, very data that you're measuring?
It's a great question. I think a lot of companies are trying to answer it. Zapier has an excellent culture. It's wrapped around 5 core values. One is default to action always, right? Number one, default to action. Number two, default to transparency, right? Always be open, work in the open, let everybody know what you're doing. Build the robot, don't be the robot. Don't go around doing extra work you shouldn't be doing, right? We're going to automate most things. And empathy over ego, always empathy over ego. And the last one, which is probably the most important, grow through feedback. And that is really how we use data to drive where we're going. We have pulse surveys every couple of months. We're tapping into our employees, we're tapping into our customers. When we receive that data, every single leader is challenged to set a goal to move the needle on those numbers, right? Even if their numbers are good. My last survey results, all the numbers were good. We're still going to take the lowest ones, and I'm setting up goals to move that needle up, because we're trying to challenge ourselves at all times, always grow through feedback. And that's the main thing that we do.
No, I love that. I love that. And, what I'm hearing there too is like, you guys have really created a framework and a formula that, defines the ultimate success of the company. And if you're living within those 5 core values that, that you're getting what you want, the company's getting what you want, and the customer is going to be getting what you want. And that's why I like to recommend to people too, is like do an energy audit of your time, because a lot of times, so one of those core values you mentioned, they're spending their time in spaces and places that they shouldn't be. And it's usually a symptom of comfort. Like, hey, I'm comfortable doing this, but it's well below my pay grade. It's something I shouldn't be doing. And it's basically in the way of the very things that they should be doing. That's going to drive the needle in all those core areas that you want to. So what I like to tell people to do an energy audit every single, quarter, and look at, take a week and just really, set your alarm clock on your phone, maybe 4 different times. And what you're doing on that alarm clock, the 4 different times per day, is you got a sheet of paper like this. You draw a line down the middle of it and write down on one side, what are the things that I should be doing that are in my pay grade, things that I'm passionate about. On the other side, what are the things that I shouldn't be doing, not in my pay grade? And then, oh, by the way, the things I really am not passionate about that I'd like to get somebody else to do. You do that energy audit and then look, hey, who can I get to replace this? Who can I hire to get to this? Who can I delegate this down to? And then you start to get clarity of where, because energy, time, that's our most valuable commodity, I think, in the planet. And everybody says that I talk to when I'm coaching people, that, hey, there's never enough time in the day, right? But it's like, well, maybe because you're allocated and invest your time, again, in the wrong spaces or places. By doing that audit, almost every single time, we free up at least 30% of somebody's energy. And now that you have that 30%, imagine all of a sudden your iPhone, how panicked do you get when it's on the red bar and it's about to die? But what if, like that, boom, you could put another 30% into there? What would happen with the panic, right? You got more energy back in, cycled back into the phone. Well, I think you can do the same thing with your life and cycle back into your life and have other people take on those tasks you shouldn't be doing. And it's just the intentionality behind it. Every single quarter doing that and getting yourself, really getting yourself in alignment.
You are 1000% correct. And now this is like the essence of what my day-to-day is about, right? So like you said, ensuring that people don't waste their energy. I think we can split it into 2 roads. One, we want to automate as much as possible, right? I work for Zapier. Not only am I a leader there, I'm also a brand ambassador there. So I'm always going to be a proponent of automation, AI. You automate things. You want to build a robot. You don't want to be a robot. Those days are over, right? And secondarily, when we rate our direct reports, any IC, they're rated on 3 things. 1 is alignment. Do you do the right work? 2 is execution. Are you doing the work right? And 3 is elevation. Are you helping to make yourself and others better? That's the only 3 things that we rate people on. That's our performance review right there, right? And the key for that, are we doing the right work? And like you said, David, sometimes people get very comfortable, specifically some of our more advanced, right? If you get into senior or staff engineers, a lot of those guys, they get stuck into certain habits. They don't want to delegate certain things because they like it, right? But it's not always the best use of their time. And sometimes their time can get pretty expensive. So you have to make sure that you're working with them. And that's what the role of a leader there is, the manager. Is I'm constantly coaching. Hey, you're going to drop some of this stuff and you're going to pick up some other things that are more appropriate for your role. And then we start digging into those strengths. That's where I get to bring that strengths-based coach to the table, because some people are going to be much better as an author than an editor. They can get the document started. They can get that architectural decision record started, but they're not great at bringing it to the end. Some people can't get it started, but they're great at ripping apart what somebody started to bring it to the finish line.
Yep.
We believe in get the expert to do what they do. Bring those authors to the front. Let them start. Hey, they're drafting things. Bring those editors to the end. They're helping rip it apart and bring it to version 3, version 4. This is publishable. Let people do what they do best. And that way you're not wasting so much energy.
No, I love that. I love that. And, I'm hearing a lot about, core values, company culture there. And what it sounds like to me that they do a great job over at Zapier is, putting the right people in the right seats with the right skills. And I'd be curious what your hiring process looks like, because we have a recruitment company, Team Hired, one of the best recruitment companies in the insurance space, where we help people get hired. And we have our own formula, but I'd be curious of your formula, what you guys do to hire the right talent first and foremost, and then what that right onboarding looks like too. Because I think some people, they don't have any of it. They don't know how to find the right talent. And then once they have that right talent, the other part of it is, how do I give them the right tools for success? So within that first 90 days, if I do attract that right person, then I'm not going to lose them, and I can put them in the right seat that really, fits their skills the right way.
Well, first, anytime we talk about hiring at Zapier, it's important to note that Zapier is an all remote company. It has always been an all remote company, right? It's 14 years old, never had an office. We've always had a global workforce, right? Now that gives us an advantage in hiring, that we can really hire from anywhere. We can go find the best talent. We're not locked into any regional location. But that also makes us distributed, which is a unique environment to work in. So the hiring process, I'm actually hiring right now, and I've been interviewing for weeks and weeks, and it's stretching on. But so we bring apart, we have recruiters screen. My most recent opening, I got over 2,000 applications in for this role. The recruiters are constantly screening. I'm going in, I'm kind of screening from the top. So I can go through a good swath of 500. I'm really just looking for outliers at the top, right? Like people, I really want to meet this person, bring them in. I really want to meet that person, bring them in. The recruiters are usually doing the opposite, right? They're looking at the bottom, tossing people out. So together, we're bringing a nice cohort of people flowing through a pipeline. They get a chance to meet with our recruiter for a recruiter screen. Then they come to me for a job fit. I get a chance to really see if I think they're going to be what we call a bar raiser, right? We're not looking for cookie cutters or just another hire. We want any hire that we bring in to be a bar raiser in some fashion. So as the hiring manager, I decide up front, what's the bar raiser trait that I'm looking to bring in here, right? And then everybody in the pipeline, from the recruiter all the way to our executives who come in at the end to do a bar raiser interview, checking for that trait. We also give a tech assessment. So we send, if they make it past me, we send them an issue, right? A problem. Solve this problem for us, right? Yep. We do encourage the use of AI tools, because we use AI tools ourselves. So 100% of our employees are AI fluent. So we don't have any problem with a person utilizing AI tools to solve the solution. Once you do that, though, you're going to have to turn that back into us, and you're going to meet with our team so they can kind of review it. We can review it together. And that's when they're going to assess, okay, we see that you used AI tools, but you still know what you're doing, right? You understand why they worked, right? Yep. And then after that, they go to a senior leader session. And then finally, there's a bar raiser, which is either held by one of our directors or our executives. And that bar raiser, like I said, is checking against what I wrote at the beginning of the whole thing, that I'm looking for somebody who raises the bar in this way. The final interview is going to check for that to make sure that that's the case.
No, I love that. I love that. And one of the things that you said, you spend your time where the recruitments are like taking all the, people from the bottom of the pile, weeding them out. And then you're looking for the cream at the very top. So when you're looking for that, that cream that really rises to the top, what are some of the fundamentals that you're looking for? So you're actually spending your time with only the absolute right people that you either get on a call with, get on a Zoom interview, or you're getting, face to face with.
Well, we have some really good tools that utilize AI that kind of can give us some, hey, here's 10 criteria we're looking for. And I'm not a big resume guy. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's true. I don't like resumes. I don't really like looking at resumes. We have a pretty good application that we ask some good questions. I like to look at that. How did they answer those questions, right? Because that's going to lead. I want to know who you are right now, right? I'm not super concerned with where you went to school and what your GPA was and all of that stuff. Like, as long as you have the minimum number of years of experience we're looking for, I really want to know, how does your brain work? Right? We work in data, and that is a unique role. Not everybody is thrilled with working with data every day, right? So I'm looking for people who are thrilled working with data every day. And that, I can't look at a resume and see that. I want to look and see how you answered the questions on our questionnaire. And then when you come into the job fit, my questions, I get to write my own questions, and they're tailored towards eliciting signal. I always let people know there's no right or wrong answer to any of the questions I'm asking. I'm looking for signals of who you are and what you bring to the table.
I'd be curious, what do some of those questions look like? Because I think everybody's always looking for great interview questions, right? That are determined.
Yeah.
So when you're asking those right questions, that I guess that reveals to you the right data you need to make that determination, is if they got the propensity to exist at the top like you're looking for. What do those questions look like?
Well, it can fluctuate depending on the role, but one of my favorite ones that's pretty versatile is, tell me about a time where you had a conflict with a coworker, right? Like, you put together a solution, you feel like this is going to work, you're proud of it, you go to submit it, and a teammate's like, nope, not even close. I don't like that, and I'm not rolling with it. How do you deal with that moment? What do you do, and how do you move forward? I always want to know how people handle healthy conflict, because I'm a big fan of healthy conflict. You need conflict, and a person who knows how to come with fruit out of the soil of conflict. That's what I'm looking for.
No, I love that. I love that. And how about some other ones? What are some other, like, if you were to boil it down to, like, your top 4 or 5 questions that you're asking during the hiring process? Because I really think there's a lot of people out there, when they're interviewing, it's like really not asking the right questions. They're trying to ease their pain maybe faster than they should, so they make that hire, they pull the trigger too quick, and then they find out, hey, that's the wrong person, and it's too little too late. So what are some other things that maybe divulge and uncover that right person in your organization?
You always got to guard against leniency bias. That's something that we see a lot, right? Especially when a role first opens, everybody tends to say, hey, you know what, these first few people, they're great. I think they're okay. Let's push them through to the next phase. And then once you get deeper in, you realize, you know what, those first few people, they weren't good enough to make it in those deep phases. So we try to guard against that leniency bias that happens up front. But a couple of, like I said, most questions, I manage what's called a SRE, site reliability engineers. I manage data engineers. And so we tend, depending on which role I'm hiring for, I'll switch it up. But most of it has to do with, I'm asking them to tell me about an experience that they've had in a particular way. And what I'm looking for is someone who can really communicate with me and tell me the story. Storytelling is so underrated in tech and in companies overall. I'm not looking for someone who may have the story in them, but I have to ask 5 follow-ups to get the story. I want the story right away. I want you to be able to communicate to me, hey, here's what happened. I was in this situation. Here's what I did. Here's what happened at the end. Here's what everybody took from it. That should not take 5 follow-ups. And so that's really one of my keys. How many follow-ups does it take to elicit proper communication, a strong communication out of someone? Because again, we're an all remote company. Communication is so big for us.
No, I love that. And, being an all remote company, I know there's so many businesses being forced into that model right now, because that's more candidates than not. They're looking for those remote opportunities. They want that flexibility. Maybe the days of being in the office are a time in the past for some industries. And I'd be curious how you guys at Zapier, really what that first 90 days looks like to bring somebody into the culture, because I think it's real easy to allow somebody to go off on an island on their own, and then there becomes a disconnect. And then because they're off on that island on their own, that becomes the root cause of failure. So how do you integrate the digital world into, the world of the old, where you had brick and mortar, You had that internal company culture, replicating that from a digital perspective. And then what are some of the most important things that you found in that first 90 days to get that person up and running to be a valuable contributing team member?
Well, I'll start with number one. Our entire hiring process is that we're never looking for cookie cutters.
Yep.
We want unique individuals, and we want to be able to help them grow in a unique shape, right? So I say that to say when I'm hiring, and actually it's funny, one of my favorite questions, which I probably should have brought up last time, is this: how do you, in particular, if we hire you, what's your typical method for onboarding into a intense, process-heavy place, right? Like, do you tend to like put your head down for a couple of days and read all the docs? Do you want to jump in and get your hands on and try to work on something? Everybody's a little different. So one of my final questions in the job fit interview is to ask them that. How do you typically like to be onboarded? So we can start putting together a unique onboarding plan, right? Like there is no such thing as a template for a 30, 60, 90 plan at Zapier. It's always going to be different. It's going to depend on the role, the level, and the individual, right? If I use myself as an example, I came into Zapier 5 years ago as a senior engineer. I was told, you're probably going to take a full year to ramp up here. That's how unique this place is. And you've never worked at a place like this. You may not be fully onboarded for a full year. And looking back on it, I think that was pretty accurate.
I love that. And then one of the things I got in the notes here that's pretty interesting, and this is a term that's definitely very connected to our family, is neurodivergence and leadership. I know you made a statement before that neurodivergence made you a better leader. Which trait shifted from being a quirk to an asset? Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
It was a journey, right? So I had a unique journey into the corporate world that didn't get the start that I would see as typical. So when I came into the corporate world, I kind of thought everybody else is ahead of me. I came through this community college route. Maybe I'm not picking things up as fast. Maybe I'm not as sharp of a worker. Maybe I'm lazy, right? Because I found myself just like
all those doubts and limiting beliefs were coming up.
Yes, I would just get stuck in my thoughts. Like I would have 1,000 thoughts, and literally I would just sit there for an hour and not do anything, just be stuck in these thoughts. And I was like, you know what? I'm a lazy person. I must be lazy. Everybody else is probably knocking it out the park. They're probably killing it, writing all this code. And here they hired this lazy guy, right? And I kind of went like that for a while. But I would get these promotions, and I would have all these people saying, "You're so great, and you're doing we see so much in you. We're going to give you another promotion." And in my head, I'm like, "Why are they promoting me?
Yep.
I'm so lazy. I'm not doing like what everybody else is doing, right? Like there's times where I go 2 hours and I'm just sitting there. What's going on?" Yep. What I found out, I finally went to a therapist. I'm talking through my therapist about PTSD, and obviously know I have PTSD. I've known that for a long time. So as we're walking through it, and finally she's like, "Have you ever thought about adult ADHD?" And I'm like, "No," because
I got it. So
yeah, I'm like, I'm a pretty laid back dude. I don't think I'm hyperactive. And she's like, "Well, it doesn't mean physically. It can be mentally and cerebrally hyperactive." Yep. And I was like, whoa. So she gave me this test to take. I took it. And our next session, she said, "Hey, well, actually, you ended up with severe adult ADHD." And I'm like, okay, never would have guessed that. But it made everything fall into place. So again, this was only a couple of years ago. So I'm in Zapier. I am in our way of growing. Number one, anytime you're troubled, you go to the core values.
Yep.
Grow through feedback. They just gave me some feedback. You have severe ADHD. How are you going to grow through that feedback? So I instantly talked to my manager about it. Default to transparency, right? Not going to hide this. This is what I'm learning about myself. Hey, default to action. I've put together some goals to figure out how to deal with this a little better, right? Use our own tools. I'm using Zapier tools
Yep.
to help manage my own calendar better. I'm using AI, right? I'm talking to AI agents as a person with a 20 plus year career in data who's now a manager who found out he has adult ADHD. What are some adjustments that would probably need to be made? Oh, calendar management is number one. Let's be more intentional about those 30-minute time blocks, right? Because then I found out if I have one specific thing on my calendar that takes a half an hour, I'm going to do it.
Yep.
I'm going to say no to everything else and I'm going to do it. But if I don't put that one thing on there, I'm going to be stuck in my thoughts thinking about 1,000 things that I need to do.
Absolutely.
So I've been able to use that.
I love that. I'm a firm believer in that too, because I'm same thing, neurodivergent. Got the ADHD, and I really try to look at, hey, where is that a strength in my life? Because I really do think many aspects of it is a superpower. It's my creativity, it's my problem solving, it's it gives me a lot of different abilities. But then there's the weaknesses too, and I think too often people don't reflect on that. Hey, this is who I am, but how can I leverage this? Hey, I got my strengths over here, but what tools and what strategies can I implement that shore up those different weaknesses that I have? So I'm same way. I'm living in AI and using AI in all those areas of the things that because one thing I don't like to do is analyze a ton of emails and have to write a lot of emails back. I'll look at the things that my brain tends to avoid. And it's like, how can I use AI to do that for me? And it's been absolutely instrumental giving me time back in my day, using different tools, using different, automation, so to speak. I'm a big believer in calendar blocking too, because real easy, the way our brains get is like, we got all these ambitions, we got all these goals, we got all these things that we want to do. And then before you know it, your brain formulates this list at the start of the day. Like, hey, I got 50 things that get knocked out, and you're no way you're going to knock out those 50 things. But what can I do to prioritize them and then take the things that are most important and then toss them on the calendar in a time block? And then, when that time comes around, it comes down to discipline.
Yes.
One thing that I found that, having ADHD, what it allows me to do is hyper focus.
Yes.
So what that really allows me to do is hyper focus on my discipline habits. Like I got my health back through hyper focus in wellness, in health habits, getting the right sleep, making sure that I'm getting up and doing the right routine every single day, working out every single day, those hyper habits, carnivore diet, right? We all know diet changes can be very simple, but what I did is I took that skill, my hyper focus, went all in and, took something that could be routinely very difficult to do, implemented it, and it really changed the trajectory of my life by changing my health around. And I think, if you use the superpower of that tool to all the ADHD entrepreneurs out there, which is way more than
ton of them,
then I think we realize that are out there. And then you put mechanisms in place. There's so many AI tools now. Like when I think about it, there's, motion. There's an motion you can do for calendar management in AI task allocation. There's tools out there like, even outside of Chat GPT and all that, you can use Superhuman. Superhuman plugs into your email and helps you create workflows that are automatic to take the thinking out of it and help you write back your emails in AI. So like what took you maybe 2 hours before that gave you that overanalysis paralysis, like you can get done in 20 minutes now, and imagine the time that you're getting back. So now we even go back to what we talked about earlier there. You do that energy audit, give your time back through delegation and having other people do the things you shouldn't be doing. But now imagine you start to really recognize, hey, where your strengths, where your weaknesses are, and what tools can I implement to now take the time that I do have and on the things that I should be working on and just be way more effective on it. Man, then you start to operate at like, I know you were in the military, you start to operate like that, high level Navy SEAL or Green Beret, and you just really become an expert at your craft, and that energy output can get so much more input by just raising your level of awareness and effectiveness.
Absolutely. And again, shameless plug to Zapier. Zapier has agentic AI. You can create an agent that does a lot of that. I actually created an agent that when I'm in Slack all the time, there's always so many things that I need to respond to as a manager. It's either directly to me or it's to my team, and I need to wade through the whole thread to see
Yep.
what it is. I just created an agent where I just click an emoji and it will read the entire thread, decide what it is that I know, knowing my role, decide what it is that I need to think about, go to my calendar, find the next 30-minute block and block it out with the description that I need to think about what it just pulled out of that thread. So just like that, one
Wow.
click and I'm time blocking my intentionally time blocking my calendar.
No, I love that. I'd like to dive in a little bit deeper on that because I know you're a huge proponent from AI, AI
Yeah.
ninja, so to speak, over here. So, how are you? Especially being over at Zapier, how are you personally using AI, and what AI agents are you using to really make your workspace in your life so much more efficient? And what are some of the most valuable tools that you've seen out there, maybe for other people, that some of the listeners could implement today that could provide profound impact, into their life through implementation?
Yeah, well, Zapier, we were really early adopters, right? So about we go on a yearly retreat every year, and we were in I think we were in Denver 2 years ago, and our CEO Wade Foster, he just called an AI code red. He's like, you know what? At the speed we're moving, AI is everything, right? So
Yep.
ChatGPT, OpenAI accounts was purchased for every single employee, right? Every employee gets an account. And we were also encouraged, dig in, figure it out. What can you
Yep.
solve with it, right? Get as creative as possible. And so we've been that way for 2+ years. And so I've used ChatGPT on a daily basis since then. My children use it. Now it's to the point where I'm more into more agentic AI than generative. Obviously, just to explain to everybody, like ChatGPT is a generative AI tool, right? Generative means that it will create for you. It will either write something or it will create an image. Whereas agentic AI is more about doing instead of
Yep.
creating, right? So it's an agent, just like if you were an actor and you had an agent, your agent's going to act on your behalf, do things on your behalf, call people on your behalf, set up appointments on your behalf. That's what an agent can do. And that's where I think so much of the power lies, right? And then even in Zapier agents, there's a component called Zapier AI where you can just choose whether you want to use Gemini or Claude or Anthropic or ChatGPT. Which AI tool do you want? They're all baked in. So, right, and I think that's kind of where we're headed now. When it comes to what can leaders do as far as AI, my first encouragement is always because I know there's still a lot of people who are a little bit hesitant on AI. There's a little bit of stigma around it. Um, I would say throw that stigma out, throw it out the window, right? I know there's some people out there who are like, oh, you shouldn't use it to write this, or you don't want to get caught using it to write that. Throw it all out. The
Yep.
tools are out there, and the best of the best are using those tools. So if
Oh,
you're
100%.
not, you are going to lose. So you have to throw that stigma out.
I think they said the same thing when, back in the day, or like old school, like spell check came out. Oh, how could you use spell check? Well,
Exactly.
why would you send off an email that had misspellings in it or improper grammar when you had a tool at your disposal? Same thing
Yeah,
here. If you got something, then you could, take your words and re-wordsmith it, or you could take a task and make it inherently. That's what the tool is created for. And I
that's what it's
don't think,
created
they
for.
say people are going to be replaced by AI. I think to a degree that's true, but I think the main people are going to be replaced by AI are the ones that don't adopt AI and that are left behind. And if you are one that chooses to remain into the 1%, which I don't think is difficult to do right now, the 1% of users that are really just leaning into AI, and to your point, they're being good students of it, learning it, adopting it, and putting these principles in their life. Well, they're going to learn to adapt to change ahead of the bell curve, and they're going to
Yes.
live in the realm of the 1%, which is easy to do right now. And
Yes.
if you can get ahead of that and live into the realm right now, you're going to grow and maintain within that. And you've pretty much secured your place, I believe, out there, when this new world emerges, which I think, we got a new .com boom ahead of us, because what we see in AI hasn't even scratched the surface yet of what is yet to come. And, I think real encouraging to somebody that can lean in it like that they're going to be so far ahead of the game. And I think there's going to be more opportunity than ever before for people to choose to get on board.
It's a huge opportunity. I called all of my friends. Toby was one of them. I called all of them a couple of years ago and was like, listen, this is as serious as it gets. You really got to understand the opportunity here. This is the wave of the future. And yet it is not behind a paywall yet. You don't have to go to a 4-year degree college to learn it. This is probably the last time that's going to be true. You have the opportunity to learn for free. At the same time, the best of the best are learning it. That is a huge opportunity. You can't let that go to waste, right? And so I think it's really just super important. And as far as replacing humans, it's never going to replace all humans, right? But I look at it like this: the robots have showed up to work late, right? I feel like for the last 75 years, industry, specifically U.S. industry, it outpaced technology. Anybody who's worked at large companies know, especially if you worked in IT, the tech is always lagging behind. It can never keep pace with what the industry's trying to do. So what happened is the companies can't slow down. They got to make money. They got to build. So they turned people into their robots. They made them do robotic things and gave them robotic jobs and robotic tasks. But now the real robots are here. They showed up late, but they're here. So now, if you're one of those people that have found yourself in a robotic job, you will have a little bit of an identity crisis and a little bit of a tech panic on your hands. But I think you can get past that by recognizing you were never a robot to begin with. You accepted that. You didn't have to. You are rare. You have been through a unique journey. God has brought you through so much in life. And a lot of times to get that job in that cubicle or that robotic job, we had to hide all of that uniqueness to get there.
Yeah, no, God, it's another term a mentor of mine says, God created an original, so why die a copy, right? Absolutely. And I think that's what society does, is they put us in the box and they make us a copy, they make us a clone. And then it's like before we know it, we're in the matrix, so to speak, right? And then we lose our creativity. We lose like the very things that, hey, I believe every one of us was created as a creator by our creator, created as a creator to go out there and create. And then society conforms us to this box to do this, do that, do that. And before you know it, you go from creator to mechanical and just going through those motions. And then you create this disconnect from human nature, right? And I think that's what really separates, when you look at it, AI from human. Like, we have this unique ability that I think is irreplicatable. Like, you can't replicate the human brain, the human spirit, and that heart, right? And we're meant to be creators that go out there and create impact into the world. And it's like, the more you can, I think, stay connected to that, then, I think that's, again, going back to being in alignment with your assignment. And, that's where magic happens in your life.
Absolutely. You can't let yourself be limited to that job description paragraph, because that can be replicated, right? When you can be limited like that, something can replicate it, right? And I go back to that word scarcity. One of the things that I first learned when I became a manager and started hiring was that I'm going to put a value on all of these folks. And that value, unfortunately, is based on how easily I can replace them. That's just the way of the world. That's where that number comes from. So the key is, if you become a person, a shape in your organization or in your entrepreneurship that's really boxy and predictable, that's super easy to replace. But if you bring all of you and be that weird, odd shape that brings impact in ways that nobody even expected, that's super hard to get rid of. Very hard to get rid of. We call it being spiky. there's a lot of people who are spiky in their profile. They don't fit any box. From day one when I was hired as Zapier, my manager sat me down and he said, I want you to be a unique leader. I don't want you to have one box. I want you to find whatever shape you are and let's grow that to the max for us, right? And that's what I try to help people do. And I think that's right now in the advent of the AI age is more paramount than ever to find your uniqueness and remember who you are. I call it remember you. You got to remember you. And that's the reason why I wrote this book. I had a lot of other books on my mind, and God was like, this is the one that's needed right now.
Oh, love that. I love that. And I know, a big thing that I love about you too is you're a big person of faith. Faith's been the foundation of everything in my life. When I look back at every setback in my life, like the one thing I've been, completely blessed with was a family, a father, a mother that really instilled with me faith, right? And every time one of those tipping points came up into my life that could have killed me, right? There's that decision, right? We got on the left shoulder fear, we got on the right shoulder faith. And I think society programs us to be in that face of fear. But I think going back to your point earlier, it's just like you're reframing things, right? And I think you can define fear of one of two ways: in a lens of scarcity or a lens of faith. Forget everything and run, or FEAR, face everything and rise. And I started to notice patterns in my life when I lived in that lens of faith. It's kind of like when I hear the word faith, sometimes I think Indiana Jones, take that step out into the unknown. It's invisible. And because you're trusting in there's the bridge that you get to walk across. And I can't even speak to how many invisible bridges that I walked across because of my faith, that I wouldn't be here in front of you today if I didn't. And I'd be curious the profound impact that faith has had in your life to get you to where you were, or from where you were to where you are, and then how it continues to lead and guide you, out in the professional world.
Yeah, growing up, my mom and my grandma, they were both from Mississippi. They were staunch Christians. I mean, my grandmother, I still have her Bible, one of those big ones with all the pictures in it. Yeah, and they really impressed upon me the power of Jesus. My grandmother used to say the name. She felt like there was power in the name, so she would say the name a lot, Jesus. And we didn't have money and means and wealth and things like that, but she was so content and pleased all the time. So when I grew up, I kind of went into my own doubts. I felt like I want to question the Bible. I think I got the answers, right? I was one of those kids, right? I went off to college and I was like, I got so many questions that I think I'm going to be a questioning person instead of a believer. I'm going to be that doubting person. And life just brought me back to square one, right? When my brother passed away, there were some supernatural things that happened. We probably don't have time to go into them here, but 5 years later, my mother passed away, and I found her body in her apartment. I had to break the door down with my shoulder, and she was in there. And I recall I was 21 years old, and I was at home for summer from college, and I remember here's this person who's the most important person in the world to me, and she passed away, and I had perfect calm and stillness. I remember it being so calm. You know how sometimes you can see like through the sunlight, you can see like the dust particles float.
Yeah.
I saw that, and I could never get that image out of my mind. And I know in that moment that that's the Holy Spirit holding. I know that that's not my power. In my power, I was completely fractured.
Yep.
But God held me together. And so what I do, all of my faith is based off what I call a David type of faith, right? Like when David fought Goliath, he didn't come up and say, I'm going to beat him because I'm cocky and I know how to fight. He said, no, I'm going to beat him because I fought a bear and God was with me. I fought a lion and God was with me. So he's going to be with me again. That's the way I approach it. From what I've been through, I've seen God move. Even though I was questioning, even in my own doubts, God moved in a magnificent way. So I always show up knowing God is faithful. Even when I'm not, God is faithful.
Yeah, and they say it in the scripture too, like if if God's so gracious enough to take care of the birds in the sky, what will he do for you? So if even that they're always taken care of, they're always nurtured, they always have what you need. Sometimes you do too, and you just gotta, you gotta let go, let God sometimes, and just lean into that faith. And I found it can be very liberating. And it's not perfect, right? We go back. I think we're human. We have those setbacks, whether it's emotionally, spiritually, and then we just got to recenter and realign ourselves. And that's what I've always found. It's like, hey, if I stay within an alignment of my assignment and I'm doing those right things that are all in alignment with the Almighty, like more times than not, I'm in spaces and places that serve me rather than not.
Absolutely.
No, I love that, my friend. No, it's been absolutely incredible episode having you on here. I loved hearing your story. I loved hearing your journey, how you're going out there and making an impact, leading other people. And as we kind of unwind, before we get into, hey, how do people follow you? How do they work with you? Where do they find you? One of the last questions that I like to ask on here is a legacy question, because I think a lot of people, always question, what is my purpose? What is my legacy that I want to leave behind? So my question to you would be, if next week you weren't going to be on this earth anymore, and there's one thing that you wished you could leave behind that could leave that profound Mother Teresa style ripple effect into the world, that's going to, sum up your legacy, and what would that be?
I honestly feel like I'm already doing it. I feel like that's why I write. My mom passed away. She was 60 years old. And I remember her telling me she always wanted to be a writer, and she never did. It was one of the regrets of her life. And I told myself, I'm not going to have that regret. So when God puts a story in me, I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to publish it. Even if I got to self-publish it, I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to get it to the people that God wants me to get it to. And I've done that. This is now my 4th book, and I want to continue to do it. I have more in me. I want to continue to grow and continue to show up. I just want to, my legacy, I want to be this. He poured it all out. He poured it all out. He didn't try to take it with him. He poured it out.
Love that. I love that. And I guess last but not least, like, how do people follow you? How do they find you? How do they work with you?
Yeah, you can go to my website. It should be right there under my name, imjfloyd.com. You can check out my new book, Rare on Purpose. You can also check out any of I have a workshop called a Rare on Purpose workshop. And you can book me as a speaker, because I love to bring this message directly to people. I'm a people person. And I just gave this workshop. It was as a 60-minute workshop in New Orleans for the Zapier yearly retreat, and want to bring it to you or your organization as well.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much today for your time, my friend. It's been absolutely incredible. Those of you that are listening live, to make sure to show Mr. J some love down in the chat. If you're watching the rerun, do the same thing. Give it a like, give it a love, show some love, reach out, buy his book. The same way he poured into you, pour into him. I'm a big believer in reciprocation. And, the least we can do is buy that amazing book that's out there that I'm sure will have some more profound insights. And Jay, just it's been an honor, a privilege, and an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
Same to you, David. Really appreciate it. And you too as well, Andy.
Great to have you, Jay. Thank you so much.
And this, folks, has been another episode of Ask the Experts. And we're going to be back next week with another amazing expert that's going to be pouring into you live in the Insurance Syndicate Group. And until then, we'll see you next week.